In today's episode, Oz asks, why is some consumer AI so bad? Instagram, for example, senses that I like bright-colored clothes, then it shows me ads for bright-colored clothes that are also cheap crap that I'd never buy. What is the perspective of these tech companies? Does that work great for most people? We just need to get this right for 5 people. It covers the cost. We know it generally sucks, but it's better than nothing. So it was a good question. The answer has a lot to do with how recommendation engine technology works. Recommendation technologies take in data sets and essentially try and find patterns in those data sets to predict outcomes, right? So if you like these certain things, we're going to predict certain other things. Recommendation engines can use a lot of very different algorithms under the hood. And one of the challenges we have, and it's a challenge in the industry overall, is that a lot of these companies don't reveal what is in their algorithm, what algorithm they're using. Are they using something as simple as like a naive Bayesian classifier? Are they using something as complex as a many layered deep neural network? Are they using k nearest neighbor clustering? We don't know. We don't know what's under the hood, and so we can't necessarily offer input as to why some things behave the way they do. But there's three general considerations as to why some of these algorithms don't spit out useful stuff. The first and by far the most likely is computational cost. The more complex the algorithm, the more it costs to run it. And the cost here is in computational capacity. How fast can you get the result? With a lot of ad systems, for example, you were talking about millisecond response times, particularly when you're doing stuff like header bidding and things where there is a real-time auction going on, and ad systems have to match and generate results extremely quickly. And as a result, they have to pick algorithms that are super fast, even if the accuracy leaves a little something to be desired. I mean, it's better than nothing. For those who remember the early days of digital marketing, you'd be browsing on a website and you have a Medicare wheelchair program being displayed to someone who's 22 and healthy. It's like, no, that's completely incorrectly targeted. Speaking of which, there is always the potential for advertisers themselves simply being so bad at advertising that they have blanket targeting, and the machines cannot override a user's preferences. If the advertiser says, "Hey, I want to advertise to every living person within the boundaries of this nation," okay, as long as you've got the budget to support it, it's going to do that. But computational cost is a big thing. Second thing is what data you have going in. The data that goes into the system may not be robust enough to offer anything that has true predictive power, especially if, and this is important, especially if companies are correctly implementing ethical, unbiased AI. You may not, for example, in a lot of cases, judge somebody and tune your ads on a protected class, or you shouldn't be. Let's put it that way. And so if the advertising that comes out is incorrectly targeted because a back-end ethical check has said, hey, you can't use race as a targeting criteria for this ads. Okay, so now you're going to get, ShamWow, right? Even if that's not necessarily something that you want, because there may be some balancing happening behind the scenes to ensure that the protected class is not being used. A third part is objective optimization, and this is where advertisers should be a little bit concerned. Objective optimization and compensation models dictate how advertising networks work. What does the ad network get paid for? Do they get paid for the impression? Do they get paid for the click? Do they get paid for the outcome? Advertisers have been pushing to very little success over the last 20 years with digital marketing to have action-based or outcome-based advertising, where you get paid for the lead generated, you get paid for the form filled out, you get paid for the shopping cart filled. And understandably, the big ad networks have absolutely zero interest in doing this, because it means much more rigorous computation on the back end. It means much more in-depth tracking. There may be substantial risks to the ad network, because you could potentially inadvertently or intentionally be collecting sensitive protected information. And frankly, most ad networks realize that behind the scenes, ad performance across the board is pretty crappy. I mean, if you think about it, when you look at like the click-through rates on some of these ads, and you look at these campaigns, when people celebrate like crazy when they get like a 5% click-through rate, which when you think about it means you wasted 95% of your budget, right? If you didn't get more than 5% of the clicks, from the advertiser's perspective, you're like, well, what did I pay for? If these systems were tuned to results-only advertising, that'd be a very different and much worse calculus for the ad networks, because they wouldn't get paid unless they got the result. Is there a possibility that companies could pivot that way? Potentially. But right now, everything in advertising is effectively cost per impression. When you look at the back-end reporting and you see all these metrics in like Facebook and stuff, effective cost per click. No, what you're really doing is you're still doing all your bidding by impressions. And you're still doing all your optimization on that. And as a result, it doesn't really matter to the ad network whether or not you click on the thing beyond with a reasonable doubt. But for the most part, it doesn't matter because they're getting paid on the impression. They're not getting paid on the click for the most part. They're definitely not getting paid on the action that was taken. Now, if advertisers forced ad networks to pivot and said, look, we're not going to pay you unless you deliver results, that would drastically change the machine learning outcomes that a lot of these systems are tuned on. It would make them computationally much more expensive because you would have to be, you wouldn't be able to do simple stuff like k-nearest neighbor clustering just on impressions, right? You would have to collect a lot more data. You'd have to collect a ton more data, and that would make for very, very different optimizations. When you look at how, for example, LinkedIn works versus how Facebook works for this advertising, LinkedIn stuff works very differently because they have, as one of their major outcomes, we need to keep people on this professional network so that our enterprise talent management software, which is 40% of their revenue, can draw useful data from people's profiles and recommend it to recruiters, right? So that's an example of a system that is much more outcome-based, and as a result, you see a very different culture on LinkedIn. You see very different advertising on LinkedIn, whereas Facebook is like, show all the ads, show every ad possible, see what people click on, cool, great, whatever. Same with Instagram. We get paid on the view, so who cares what the result is? So that's why consumer AI is so sometimes untuned. There's a bunch of different reasons, and there's no way to clearly tell without independent third-party audits what's going on behind the scenes, how it's working. I would love for companies like Facebook, for example, to reveal, hey, this is how we do the thing. These are the inputs. This is how the system is optimized, but that is literally their secret sauce. So it's unlikely that they would ever reveal that, even if they could, because in a lot of cases, some of these, in Facebook's case, some of their neural networks are so complex, I doubt there's any single human that could even interpret what's going on behind the scenes. The models are just that big. So really good question. There's a lot to unpack in here about how these algorithms work, how they're tuned, and what's going on underneath the hood. Hopefully, as time goes on, we will see advertising itself pivot more towards results-based advertising as well. If you have follow-up questions, leave them in the comments box below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the newsletter. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.